Welcome back to Kevin Pollak's Chat Show. I am, as always, Chat Show. We're coming to you live from the Earwolf Studios in Hollywood, California. Please stop by. We're on Sunset Boulevard, and just come on up to the second floor. Tell them I sent you. There's no security. Just walk right in and say, I'm here to see Kevin Pollak, and see what happens. There's no Sammy or Jamie today, and I've got one of your letters that asks questions about that, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. And in fact, are grateful when you write to us at kpcsfanmail@gmail.com. The new year, I hope it's going well for you. For those of you who give a good goddamn about The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Season 2 dropped. It's on the Amazon Prime, and it's waiting for you. We might have picked up a few more awards this week, and it really is becoming obnoxious. The backlash has begun within the industry. We are generally loathed by other people whose shows are up, I'm going to say against ours, but it's all bullshit in terms of the against part. The Critics' Choice Awards was last night upon this recording. And once again, everyone nominated from the show won except for Tony Shalhoub. And I think that we all know the reason. He's won enough is the answer. Rachel Brosnahan, the show's lead, continues her. She's like 6-0. She's yet to go down fighting. And I think she's run out of really nice things to say about the rest of us in her acceptance speeches. But it was cool to be on stage for a nanosecond when the show won Best Comedy. You know, you look out into the people, you know, Lady Gaga sitting there, and there's that person, and you're like, they have to look at me right now. Oh, they're not looking at me. They're looking at the one of us who's giving the speech. But it was a great deal of fun, and thanks to the critics on this particular outing. Thank you, critics, for giving a shit. So I want to get to this letter because those of us who are kind enough to write to us at kpcsfanmail@gmail.com often hear me say, welcome to the chat show, how are you? And then waiting for an answer. So you like to write as to how you're doing. And then I'll say no Sammy or Jamie today because for 9 years we were a live streaming video show. And Sam Levine and Jamie Foxx, she of my better half, were like sidekicks on the show. And Sam has indeed guest hosted for me on a number of occasions now that we moved to the Earwolf as an audio-only podcast. And Jamie, for those of you asking, just said, yeah, fuck it. I don't need the aggravation. Go do the thing. She was there really as the head writer of the show and also ran the chat room when you were asking live questions. She never wanted to be on camera. And so let's get to your specific email. This one from Al Hart. I love the chat show. By the way, a great way to start any letter to kpcsfanmail@gmail.com is thusly. I love the chat show. I've watched or listened to every single episode. Like a lot of people, I'm writing about losing Jamie and Sam. Spell Jamie correctly, by the way. Not easy to do. Jaime or Jaime. I'm writing about losing Jamie and Sam from the show. You keep saying you will explain, and then you keep not doing it. The last couple of times you brought it up, you went on to say that the show is now audio only. So fucking what? The fuck does that have to do with anything? Or what fucking planet is that an answer to the question? I love this guy. Sam and Jamie, at least have some emotion in your letters. Sam and Jamie's contribution to the show and the reason that they are missed has fuck all to do with what they look like on camera. Why does going audio only mean they are suddenly gone? We want them back, chiming in with comments and stuff they look up during the show. Please bring them back or provide a real answer as to why they are gone. Thanks, period. Al Hart. Al, God bless you and your family. And what a lovely a series of thoughts that you put into an email. It's much appreciated. I'm going to continue not to answer any more succinctly. No, the truth is that when we moved to audio only, it just seemed like I would have a conversation with the guests, and Jamie was very quick to say, yeah, no, fuck you. I think they both came for David Harbour because he had been on the show before. And then since then, she just really honestly and sincerely can't be bothered. Now, that will be potentially interesting with today's guest because they're from the same hometown. And I am prepared with her gifts for our guest, which I can't wait to get to. And in terms of Sam Levine, he guest hosts on occasion, and that's enough for me, quite frankly. Let's get to our guest, damn it. hailing all the way from Mount Lebanon. I'm going to start the show by offering up a couple of props to see if they mean anything to our guest.
Oh, wow.
And I'm getting an oh, wow.
Oh, man.
Yeah, let's.
Okay.
These are for you.
Really?
Yes.
You get to keep these?
Well, because Jamie has 37. These are from the hot dog. Oh, yeah, let's get that right up there.
Yeah,
These are from the hot dog shop, spelled old-fashioned way with 2 P's and an E on the end.
The French spelling?
The French
spelling of hot dog shop?
Hot dog shoppy.
Yes.
The dumb American would say in my case. First of all, Joe Manganiello. I said it 16 times in rehearsal.
You were
Manganiello.
perfect.
Okay, thanks. So she was raised in Ambridge, also in the Pittsburgh area.
Yeah.
The research says Mount Lebanon. Is that in fact true?
That is correct.
Okay.
For once, the internet was correct on
I
something.
know.
Yeah.
They get everything wrong. But she loves this. Do you remember at all this place? You can say no.
Well, so I've never been to the Brighton hot dog shop.
Mm-hmm.
But this cup I'm looking at says Green Tree Facts. So Green Tree was like the town where my parents lived, I believe where I was conceived, in Green Tree.
Okay. Then we've already won with this gift.
Yeah, so these are fun facts. High school, Keystone Oaks. That was the next town over, Mount Lebanon High School. We played Keystone Oaks in basketball.
Of course.
High school mascot golden. Okay, so this is about a Keystone Oaks cup, which is fun. I've never been to this particular hot dog shop, but
are you familiar with the chain?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this is awesome, man.
So they have characters on them in the shape of, they're hot dogs.
Mm-hmm.
But Jamie collects them because every now and then they'll do actual people. Like there's a Ted Danson hot dog on one of her
Because he
cups.
went to Carnegie Mellon.
Because he went to Carnegie Mellon.
Okay.
That you too are a graduate of.
I am, but I do not have a hot dog cup.
I feel like this needs to happen.
I think this is a good step in the right direction for me to
I'm
get
gonna
on
start the campaign.
Brighton hot dog shop cup.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know that you've ever been called hot dog throughout the course of your
By construction workers?
athletic career, perhaps?
Hot dog. I was more of a humble player.
Okay.
Which is in short supply in Pittsburgh sports these days. If we want to get into that rabbit hole.
Well, first of all, I'm so happy that the cups went over because
this is great. Thank you.
She was very, very enthusiastic about me passing these along.
Down there on Noblestown Road.
That's right. So I grew up in San Francisco, and when you grew up in California and you hear about a place like Pittsburgh through the 60s and 70s, my only thoughts were, the Steelers, and it's a steel town, and it's going to be sort of flat and gray. And then I go there, and I don't know how much time you've spent in San Francisco, but it's remarkably similar in terms of topography and bridges and bodies of water.
Yes.
That was shocking to me, how green Pittsburgh is.
It's a forest.
It's unbelievable. It's a forest.
And during the summertime, I try to explain to people who grew up in Florida, when I'm in that type of humidity, I'm like, oh, this is like Pittsburgh. And they look at me like, okay. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Go in August. Like I took my wife this past August because
you wanted to torture her?
Well, she loves humidity as much as I do.
Oh, okay.
So we love that.
Yeah.
But I kept saying, no, this is just like Pittsburgh. And yeah, okay, what? And I'm like, it's a jungle. Like, believe me, it is like this giant forest with these 3 rivers in the middle that form this downtown area.
Right.
And then you get this mountain that overlooks.
But the hills,
the
topography just shocked the hell out of me.
Very similar to San Francisco in that way.
Yeah.
There's all these hills, which as a kid, your first mode of transportation is bike.
Not easy going up those hills.
Oh, it's tough, man.
Yeah.
You got to go sideways. You got to kind of zigzag up the hill to get up there as a kid.
You have to serpentine.
Yes.
That's right.
Snake. Yeah.
You have to snake it.
Yeah.
So, started out with an athletic career, sidelined in high school, football injury of some kind.
Yeah, but that really, I think a lot of times, yes. I mean, yes, I did have.
Can I guess what the injury was?
I
literally do not know.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a stab because I didn't hear this term until it befell a high school football player when I went to school. I'd never heard this term, and it stayed with me all these years, and I'm going to use it now. Was it a hip pointer?
No,
Okay.
not a hip pointer.
You're familiar with the term?
Sure, yeah.
And did you know about it outside of football?
The first time I ever learned about a hip injury was probably Bo Jackson.
Okay, yeah.
Then you get
the famous.
Yes, the famous.
Wildly.
Probably maybe the most famous hip injury of all time. Certainly as a kid, that was traumatic. I was watching that game against the Cincinnati Bengals. And
oh boy.
Popped it. Anyway.
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't. I tore my MCL returning a kickoff against Ringgold High School, which was Joe Montana's old high school.
Oh, buddy.
And
again,
then
from San Francisco, he was the messiah.
Yeah, he's
in my family.
The guy. Yeah. And then from Pittsburgh, lots of great quarterbacks from Pittsburgh, by the way. Joe Namath, Danny Marino,
right?
Yeah, Jim Kelly.
I went to the Super Bowl when Marino and Clutch Joe faced each other.
Oh man,
in a Super Bowl.
84
is correct.
84, yeah.
And it was the only Super Bowl to this day played at a university stadium other than USC, which has been the home to the Raiders and other professional teams. This college university stadium had never had pros playing it before, and it was used for the Super Bowl between those two teams. Why? And can you remember the...
Oh, man.
I know, it's a horrible...
Okay, well, it's somewhere warm.
That's right.
Because they didn't play Super Bowls in cold weather back then. A home team has never hosted, or a team has never hosted a Super Bowl in their own stadium, so it wouldn't have been Miami.
Right.
So let's see who's left.
And it's the 49ers.
It's the 49ers.
So why would it be at Stanford?
It couldn't have been. But they wouldn't have done it that far north anyway. It would have been somewhere. I mean, back in the day, it was like San Diego, Houston, I guess probably New Orleans. Was Tampa in the mix at that time?
Sam, would you mind looking up the 49ers and the Dolphins Super Bowl at Stanford, final score being 35-10.
And it wouldn't have been the Orange Bowl.
Joe put on a clinic. It was at Stanford because I think it might have been 89 because I feel like the earthquake had ruined Candlestick where it was scheduled to be.
Really?
I know, it's crazy because you're right. No,
so then it would have technically been a home game for the 49ers?
Hosted by, because I think that's set in stone before they get near there, right?
Sure.
But I think the reason that statistic lived is because it ended up being at Stanford and not at Candlestick.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Look up 89 maybe. What do you got? He's going to come through for us.
Okay.
So a lot of great quarterbacks came from.
Great ones.
Through there.
Lots of greats. Yeah.
And any of them go to your actual high school?
No, my high school was, speaking of the 49ers, John Frank, tight end.
Whoa, sure.
He was from Mount Lebanon.
Right.
Yeah, so he was our big football alumni.
Sure.
But other than that, no, not necessarily from my high school. Joe was from Ringgold. Dan Marino was Oakland Central Catholic. Joe Namath was Beaver, or was it Beaver? Well, one of the Beaver high schools. And Jim Kelly, I'd have to look that up, but Jim Kelly was from somewhere around there.
And I'm guessing the growth spurt happened around high school?
There was no growth spurt. I have
you
pictures
came out of
me
it 6'5"?
Yeah, as like a little kid in like Easter egg hunts where
Towering?
It looks like someone invited a high school kid to an Easter egg hunt.
Have you seen Coach Reed? Have you seen that video that started circulating?
Yes, and Andy Reid, like, he looks like a grown man. It looks like a kid in college.
Especially the kid right behind him is like 3'0".
Yeah.
We've got an answer.
An
We got an answer to all of your calls and letters. It was San Fran 38-16. All these years I remembered incorrectly. 35-10. 1985, it was at Stanford.
Oh, wow.
It looks like to be Super Bowl 19. 38-16. That's shocking. So it was supposed to be at
and it was
Candlestick.
38-16, which would have been 3 field goals because they didn't really do 2-point conversions back in those days. So
it had to have been 3 field goals.
Yeah,
I remember that
Wow.
Montana put on a clinic, and they made such a big deal about these two quarterbacks facing each other. They both had such powerful offenses, but
2 different sides of Pittsburgh.
But the right side of Pittsburgh came through. I mean, let's be honest.
And Dan never made it again.
Nope.
That was it.
No, yeah, it's true. And Steve Young came in, and because Montana had been the Messiah, and we can stop talking about this anytime. But
I was going to ask you about Jimmy Garoppolo.
Well, such high hopes, such unbelievable high hopes.
Yeah.
But I do remember when Steve Young came in, people were unbelievably upset because the feeling was Joe had been pushed out.
Sure. He still had good years left in Kansas City.
He certainly proved it in Kansas City. Yeah. So when Steve Young came in, the locals, I'll just tell this. So I'm promoting something, I'm on Letterman, and there's a pre-interview, and I say, have Dave ask me how I feel about Steve Young's playing his first game as the quarterback for the 49ers on Sunday. And so Dave asks, now, Kevin, I know you're from San Francisco. We've talked about that before. You've had Joe Montana, the team leader, to several Super Bowls. He doesn't know how to lose. And now the Steve Young kid comes in, and he's going to take, take over for the team. I mean, what does this feel like for you? The first game is Sunday. And I later met Steve Young on the Warner Brothers lot. He was guest starring on the TV show about Superman, Lois and Clark.
Oh, the old Dean Cain.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So he did a guest spot many, many years later after he retired. And he appreciated, so he told me, the following moment on Letterman. After Letterman asked me that question, I said, well, Dave, let me put it this way. When Steve Young drops back to pass on the very first play, I'm just saying, if a single shot rang out and he clutched his thigh and fell to the ground, there'd be 52,000 witnesses and nobody saw nothing. Yeah. Cool. And but to hear Steve Young appreciated that, he said, I was home watching that, Kevin, and I laughed really hard because I knew what it meant. To the locals, I was not welcome, and it fired me to break all of Joe's records. And
listen, man, Bill Walsh, he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
Much in the way that Belichick knew what he was doing with Jimmy Garoppolo. He didn't want to give him up.
Right.
That was going to be, that was the next guy.
Right.
For him.
Yeah.
Mathematically.
Of course.
And then he had to give him away.
And I think that's why he stayed in on the bench. You know, knowing I could go anywhere. I'm going to wait for...
Incubate.
Yeah.
Much like Aaron Rodgers and get ready for my chance. And then, of course, he gets injured last year, which was kind of heartbreaking and disappointing.
Yeah, which comes back to your injury, which changes the course of your life, but not really.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
When you're that big, though, there's a lot of pressure. I'm sure, when you're growing up, you're going to play sports, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It's a big sports town.
Big sports town. And yeah, I was born big. I was just a big kid always. When I was really young, I remember some Pee Wee League basketball game where like I had 37 out of 42 points or something crazy like that.
Just because no one could stop you.
No. And
you're towering over kids.
Yeah. And then football wise,
what does that feel like? As a short guy my whole life, is there a sense at some point where it's diminishing returns, like this is too easy? Or is it just fun?
No, because the kids catch up at some point. And then in high school, I'm a 6'5" center. So, I mean, I stopped growing at 16. So at 16, I was,
done.
Present high. Yeah. And which meant that in high school, I was going up against, I went up against Danny Fortson at one point, who led the NBA in rebounding one year, who was 6'9", 250 in high school with a soft touch. There were a bunch of 7-footers, 6'9". I was short for center. So that was, I guess, karmic payback. But I was a hustler. I played tough. I tried to fashion my game after Rodman on the Pistons, back in the day. Just hard-nosed, die for every ball. That guy, rebounding, defense.
Trying harder than everyone else.
And I was a gym rat at that age. I had real trouble putting on weight at that age. I really didn't fill out until like 28 years old. So that was difficult in football when you're 185 pounds soaking wet and you play outside linebacker and you've got to line up on a tackle in Western Pennsylvania where teams have so many 300 pounders on the offensive line that they've got 300 pounders on the JV teams. So you're going up against guys 320 and then you would, like on a stunt, you move down to the guard who was 260.
You have a lot, of sacks.
You're giving up like 80 pounds. I mean, I was a hustler. I was fast on the outside. Yeah. But I mean, and against, kids that were my age, I was great, but then once you're in 10th grade and these other kids are, have a few more years of development on you. And also in Western PA, there was some kids on my team and some other teams that were dabbling in some vitamins. the old vitamin S, and coming back really big.
Country Boys.
Yeah, I mean, and then Pharmaceutical Boys, so a little bit, but yeah, there were some Country Boys. I mean, LeVar Arrington was, I don't know if you remember LeVar, he was the number 2 NFL pick overall. He went to North Hills, and he played for Penn State. He was like the greatest linebacker to ever probably play college football. He was the guy who used to just jump over the lineman and block field goals. So it was a joke. And he was a monster in high school. Senior year, he came out. He signed early, so he had this big Penn State tattoo on his bicep playing in high school ball. And he was so fast, he returned kickoffs.
He created his own destiny.
Yeah.
I should qualify. When I said Country Boys, I pictured all white kids, just to float that out there.
I mean, my high school predominantly.
That's just what I pictured when I said it. I want to be clear that I was being racist just to whites. I read in the research you had said, still growing up with all of that athletic prowess, there was a sense of not knowing where you fit in. Because you also related to, and you mentioned this out in the lobby, the D&D players. And it wasn't maybe till you found the drama department where there was more of a connection. You want to correct your previous statement?
Yeah, no, that's pretty accurate. I didn't kind of backdoor into the arts because I had an injury, in sports. That really wasn't the case. It wasn't like, oh, I got injured and then wound up in Glee Club or something. I was an artist from the time I was a little kid.
And how did that first show itself?
Painting, drawing. I would create characters and draw characters and make stories up about them, and then tell these stories to whoever would listen.
Who would listen?
Nobody at that point, except a few like best friends when I was a kid, who then became like the first kids that I ever, played Dungeons and Dragons with. Or it started with Star Wars and then G.I. Joe. And it was like I would concoct these stories with the Star Wars figures or the G.I. Joe figures or whatever we were doing. I'd make up some story, and the kids from the neighborhood would just kind of participate in these stories that I was coming up with using these figures. And then I started kind of creating my own. And it was like being a showrunner.
Sure.
In a way.
Knowing what that meant, but yes.
As a little kid, yeah. And then
at some point you got your hands on a camera?
Yeah, I did. At a young age, I got my hands on cameras. And so I started writing scripts. And I would stay up all night with a pad next to the bed and just writing dialogue for people, and we'd go out and film them.
And knowing now what a script actually looks like, how close had you got as a kid?
I mean, I'd say, close for a kid.
Really?
For a kid, yeah.
Without having ever seen one?
Yeah, I think like I was good at emulating things as a kid that caught my interest, whether that was a parody on Enter the Dragon or some sort of, my own version of, in college, I wrote a short film that was like Die Hard on Carnegie Mellon's campus.
Great. Where
the day was saved. I mean, we're talking about hot dog cups here. There was a hot dog stand on the campus. So the O is a very famous place for French fries and hot dogs in Pittsburgh. And so we had an O, we used to call the Dirty O, because there was the main O, which was like its own store. And then we had like the O hot dog stand had a stand on campus. And so I wrote this movie where, your John McClane was the guy working at the hot dog stand at the Dirty O. And Russian terrorists break into Carnegie Mellon, into the steam tunnels to try to steal the blueprints for this government satellite. Because at the time, Carnegie Mellon was creating like the tracking systems for Patriot missiles back in like Desert Storm. So there were hot zones below the underneath these tunnels under the school that you couldn't get into. Yeah, with retinal scanning. scanners and things like that, heavy government funding, and the labs were right up against these railroad tracks where these trains would come in and unload. And so there were lots of stories and mythology.
You built it in.
And so I decided to write what I thought was the mythology. Or
cast yourself as a lead?
No, I was the head of the Chechen terrorists, because Chechens were in the news at the time. So and we had a bunch of these directors and basically these stage combat trainers from the Moscow Art Theater, because Carnegie Mellon had this kind of co-op with the Moscow Art Theater. So we had all these Russians at our school to teach us Chekhov, and so I learned Russian dialogue from them so that I could play this Chechen.
You weren't fucking around.
No, and then we built a scaled down model of the University Center at Carnegie Mellon, this like a 10-foot long model, with all the bricks carved in, and we had these chemical engineers come in and set explosives on it, and we filmed it with a high-speed camera behind plexiglass, and the Chechens blew up the university center. Now,
was this the project you did to get extra credits at chemistry class?
No, that was like an Enter the Dragon kind of movie in high school.
So the one you just described, your remaking of the John McClane story.
Yes.
Was that for credits of any kind, or just nope?
Well, Carnegie Mellon is the oldest drama BFA program in the United States, and so they pride themselves on not being a film school. We are classical theater training school,
right,
and that is all.
Right.
Don't get it straight.
Yeah.
Because if you can do all of this stuff over here, you can do all the film stuff.
You'll walk right through the other stuff. And a lot of historical graduates, look them up. The list is endless from Carnegie Mellon.
Yeah. I mean, lots and lots and lots, and a lot of history there. And so they take pride, especially at that time, this is the mid-90s, where there were no cameras. You did not act for film. You're not learning to do that. You're learning to act for stage.
But you said...
I said, listen, I'm not going to go through 4 years here without getting my feet wet. And also, like I said, I was a kid who made his own movies. So I had access to, I went and pitched at the university and said, look, we have all these kids from different disciplines all over the university uniting to create this project. This is going to be great for unity, or this conversation of unity between all the schools at the university. And the president, the head of College of Fine Arts, they went for it, and we got like $72,000 to film this thing. Big camera package.
So you had a budget?
To us. Yeah, we had lenses, and donated to us by past alumni. All our film was donated at the time, and then we got G4 computers right when they came out, which were the first computers you could edit on. So we had all of this for my little half-hour movie I wrote it. It was like 11 minutes, but then when we got all this funding, I was like, okay, we're doing it.
You directed the piece?
No, I handed the directing duties off to another guy who had directed the movie that won Carnegie Mellon's Film Festival a year before, and I, was producing. I kind of, directed a couple of scenes in there. So, but I think you would probably call that second unit, and then acted in it and wrote it.
Does this film exist today?
It's on videotape somewhere in my house.
So in order to view this particular piece of work, people will have to come to your home.
Probably. It's probably somewhere online.
Probably?
Yeah. Hey, man, everybody's got a computer.
Let the chase begin. But needless to say, you, prior to that, were maybe dabbling, and then after that, there had to have been a sense of accomplishment, and this is what I want to do.
In terms of that film in particular, or just...
That experience. Or was it still just a hobby and fun?
No, I knew movie making. No, that's why I went to Carnegie Mellon.
Right.
Because
even though they were very clear, were just theater.
They were very clear they're just theater, but their track record
of launching movie stars.
Yeah, of course, and TV stars was just endless. Yeah. And they were also, they were in my own backyard.
There's that.
They're in Pittsburgh, and so there's something legendary about that. But I thought, in my estimation, because of their track record and the types of people that they attracted to their showcases after, for their graduates that were, if you go 4 years at Carnegie Mellon, they're part of a school called the Consortium. The Consortium, you participate in these things called leagues at the end of 4 years. And what it basically is it gives you 3 minutes on stage, which is like an NFL combine.
Yeah.
For actors.
Right.
We have 2 minutes on stage with a partner, 2 minutes scene on stage with a partner, and then you have a 1 minute monologue. So you have 3 minutes on stage in front of every casting director, manager, agent in all of New York and then in all of LA.
And did you have that?
And that's why I wanted to go there, because I knew that if I could get to that was going to launch me in film. And if I had this type of education, then it meant that I probably had a better shot of doing
whatever you wanted.
Of doing whatever I wanted with intelligent people.
Yeah. And in terms of just getting in to Carnegie Mellon, because that's not something you just walk into, you have to have pretty good grades, I'm guessing.
They're a little more lenient, I think, because the School of Drama,
right, is
its own school. It's the Carnegie Mellon University School of Drama.
Okay,
like at Carnegie Mellon,
right.
So they're, we're kind of like these weirdos off on the side of the campus that don't really have to abide by the rest of the university's rules.
Really?
So it is a bit like D1 football, but with that said, there were no dummies. I went to school. These were very smart actors.
Right.
I mean, there's a kid in my class who aced his SATs and like chose acting, which was okay.
Just to make everyone proud.
Yeah, probably.
But now, when you get to those wildly important 3 minutes, the 2 minute scene, the 1 minute monologue, which you would base your entire decision to attend this university
yes,
somewhat upon. What do you choose, and how does it go?
So or
didn't it happen?
No, it did happen. The whole time I was there, they wouldn't let me do Shanley.
Really?
No. Anytime I would be able to pick my own scene, which was every once in a while, they would let you pick a scene. Rather than being handed one to work on. And I would say, okay, well, I'm doing Shanley. And they'd say, no, you're not. And they thought that was a little too on the nose for my energy, they just thought, okay, we're sure you can do that. You're not doing that.
I'd rather you do Mamet?
Sure. Or,
whoever.
Ibsen or Richard III, whatever it is. And so, when it came time for leagues, I'm doing Shanley.
I'll show you.
Let's go. But the question then became, well, which Shanley? Because Shanley is very, I won't say overdone, but I mean, yeah, overdone in drama schools. Everybody does Shanley.
Which is why they were challenging you to do something else.
Something else. And so, Moonstruck was Shanley. And Moonstruck was a film. And there's a monologue in the middle. When she comes to invite Ronnie to the wedding, and he gives a story about how the slicer chewed off his hand, and Johnny has his hand and Johnny has his bride. You want me to take my heartbreak, put it away, and forget, that whole thing. So that in and of itself said everything that I wanted to say to an audience. Like in a snap of a finger, you know who I am. He's Italian, kind of Italian, or whatever you want to say, but and maybe romantic film.
Also, it sends a little bit of a message that you chose a monologue from a film.
Yes,
graduating as a theater student,
which is, hey, LA, I don't want to go. I'm not here to go to New York. I'm here to come out here,
which flies in the face of the curriculum a little bit, I would think, and also says that you're an individual who thinks independently, and I know what you'd like to see. This is what I want to do with the rest of my life. So how was it received?
Well, I
booked an agent.
I got coming out of New York. Yeah, there was a stack. They handed me a stack of responses, and they said that it was bigger than anybody who had ever gone through the leagues.
What did that feel like?
I said, I mean, you can't. Yeah, I just. At that point, I broke down. Because
sure.
It was like,
you better have.
Your whole life had led to that point. Yeah, because you just, everything in this business is so stacked against you to begin with. It really is shooting. It's shooting the eye of a needle at 100 yards. It's tough, man.
But also, I don't want to pass by the investment you made in yourself. It's something that I've talked endlessly on this show about, which is you don't need a lot of fans. You need the right fan, of course. But you have to invest in yourself and believe in yourself when those big opportunities come up. And what you've just laid out and the result is kind of one of the best examples I've ever heard of that. You weren't just being stubborn. You weren't just being, this is what I want to do, fuck you. You were also realizing, I think, it sounds like, playing to your own strength.
Yes and yes, I think, yeah. I'll back up and say this. I didn't apply to any other schools but Carnegie Mellon. Like, if I didn't get in,
this was it.
But it's also, once again, it's like, I think my year, there were almost 1,000 kids that tried out and they took 17. So I don't know what I was thinking, because if I didn't get in, like, what am I doing? Like, what am I going to do?
Did the folks or anyone ask if you applied anywhere else?
No. My mom was supportive, but she also she never, it was just, I don't know. I was really driven. I was just like a driven kid. But I did have like kind of like a fuck you attitude. I did. I did have that, like. But
that comes from belief in yourself. And it also comes from a kid who'd been applying his creativity since preteen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It wasn't just a kid who lived in a bubble and thought, I can do that.
But Carnegie Mellon's tough. I mean, those first 2 years, and back when I was there, they cut kids. So they cut.
Jesus.
There were 17 actors and 16 musical theaters when I got there. So let's say 33 performers in the drama department my freshman year. They cut 7 the first year and they cut 7 the second. So you're living in fear and terror because kids were getting sent home at like Christmas, and like the school loans they took out or their parents' money was just, it's gone.
Right.
And so, the workload was really insane. Because you would get there at 8:20 in the morning, you'd have classes until 5:30 in the afternoon. You'd have an hour-long break. In your first 2 years, you had to report to like paint crew because you weren't allowed on stage and you weren't allowed to hear anyone clap for you the first 2 years. They would just break you down mentally because you're the hot shit from your high school, wherever you came from. You're nothing here. Right. Also, kids weren't allowed to get A's until junior year. So the highest grade you could get was a B. But if you got 2 C's, then you're on probation. That happens 2 semesters in a row and you're out.
Are you supposed to also be attending parties and having fun?
That is what most colleges are about. This one, it wasn't. It just wasn't. I remember raising my hand at the beginning of our tenure there, and it was this big. They sat us all down and had all of these speakers come through, and one of the speakers was a nutritionist and a sleep expert. And they're explaining to you how much sleep you needed. Human beings sleep in 3-hour cycles. So here's the thing. If you get 3 hours of sleep, or you're going to get 3 hours of sleep, but you're thinking about studying for an extra hour and a half, like study for the hour and a half, get the 3 hours of sleep rather than sleep 4.5 hours. They were explaining to you how, like,
you're 19 years old.
Why are you telling me this sounds awful? And I remember raising my hand saying, how many classes can we miss before failing? And they said, you shouldn't miss any at all.
Yeah.
Because there were some of those classes, there were only 5 or 6 of us in like an acting lab class where you're studying, Brecht or, Shaw or something. Like there's 5 or 6 of you, so you can't miss.
Right.
So it's like,
Jesus.
It was nuts. It was nuts. But it was
but there must have been a sense of accomplishment every year. Absolutely.
But it was scary those first 2 years, and there was no confidence in those first 2 years. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to make it through this.
Right.
It wasn't really until junior year when you started getting back up on the stage where you thought, okay, I can make this work.
Right.
I can do this. And then when you make it through all 4 years, the way that they break you down and build you back up, like you're bulletproof, man.
Right.
You're ready to go.
And you must have a sense when working with, since there are a goodly amount who come from that program who actually succeed in this business because they were put through that, right? Mm-hmm. That you guys shared a foxhole in Nam.
It feels that way, yeah.
Right?
Very much.
Yeah.
Very much. Yeah, there was a teacher who recently passed away named Victoria Santa Cruz. She taught us rhythm and exploration, and there was... we recently got back together, a bunch of classmates, because someone's writing a book about her, and we were sharing like old war stories. You have that written down, Victoria Santa Cruz. Why do you have that in your notes? How did you know that? This is...
I didn't know about what you just said.
Okay.
But yeah. I have a very dear friend, wonderful actor. He's now on a show called Claws. His name is Jason Antoon. And he attended and graduated also from Carnegie Mellon. And I couldn't figure out yet how many years apart you were. You were about, as it turns out, about 6 years younger than him. So your paths could not have crossed. Right. But I mentioned him. I was going to be talking to you as a Carnegie Mellon alum. And he is the one who said, ask him about Victoria Santa Cruz.
Yeah. She was she's just, that's a generational, I won't even say generational. I just think, I mean, it's like, I don't know what. It would be like taking class, like you show up to drama school and like the Maharishi is teaching you a class.
Right.
I mean, that's really that's the only thing I can really, or, Yoda.
Right.
She saw life in a different way. And
all of it.
Everything. Her classes weren't about acting. They were about life. She was showing you who you were and why you behaved the way that you did. It was, I don't know how she did it, but she came up with this system of holding a mirror up to your face and pitting you against yourself. I mean, it sounds like I'm talking about like doing acid or something, but it's kind of like what it was like in her class. Yeah.
And for a 19, 20-year-old, whatever the number was, there are not a lot of people putting you through that.
No. And it was harsh because you had to go into her class every day or, twice a week and be confronted with all of your own shortcomings. And then you had to become responsible for them and try to change them. And I think that was incredibly useful for me. And there really isn't a week that goes by that I don't think about something that she said, especially when I'm performing. There are so many teachings that just
she
about
prepared
life.
You for.
Yeah, she just prepared you for them.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe she had something to do with instilling enough character that when you got to that final point, you said, fuck it, I'm doing Shanley.
Yeah, I mean, but I was also like a really rebellious person too, but I also knew that was the best way. If you have a minute on stage, I mean, you've got to think, they're not going to see 4 years of Shakespeare in that minute or then your 2-minute scene. It doesn't matter.
And by the way, they've seen.
And you don't want to do that there anyway.
Right.
Nobody in LA wants to watch that. So it's just, you just have to come out of the gate and show them who you are and what you want to do. So I want to do film. I'm kind of Italian. Nick Cage is cool. and I love Shanley, and there we go.
Right. This also, I'm sure you've talked about it far too much, but I'll ask. Right out of college, screen tested, booked the part for Spider-Man, but to pay the rent while you waited 6 months to start work on that job, you were a bodyguard for Tyrese Gibson.
Well, I didn't work for 6 months as his bodyguard. Probably I think my first job in LA was working as a bodyguard for him, but it was like a one-time only gig. It was just, kind of a one and done. I bounced a bit in college. And so that was,
You did that also in LA when you got here?
So when I got to LA, yeah, that was what I did to pay the bills for 6 months, but it was more like bouncing, bodyguarding, door guy, until Spider-Man started shooting, which was January of that year. So from like July through January, I bounced and bodyguarded.
Right.
One time for Tyrese.
Right. Okay. So, I was more interested about booking that job right out of college and just waiting 6 months for that job. The longest 6 months, I imagine, in your life at that point.
Yeah.
Knowing that this happened that quickly, and then the realization of hurry up and wait, one of the aspects of show business.
Oof. Yeah.
And also, was there a part of you, because there would have been of not wanting necessarily to tell everyone just because it hadn't become real yet? Or had you signed contracts and it felt real, so fuck it, tell everybody?
Okay, well, let me answer all of your questions at once. So I get done with those showcases in LA. The next day I meet with Endeavor, the agency who at the time had like 150 actors and 13 agents. It's tiny, this little boutique, mid-sized boutique agency.
Right.
Which now they're this giant mega agency that represents like
the world,
grass, dirt.
If there's money in it.
Yeah. And so, I met with them. First audition I go out on is for Peter Parker and Spider-Man, which I know that I'm wrong for. But I wear my glasses and a button-down shirt, and I go in there and I, do a great job, and we get done. And Francine Maisler, the casting director, said, you're really great, but you're totally wrong for this part. You're 6'5". You can't play the nerd in high school because who are we going to find for the bully? It's never going to work. You're not right. She said, but there is this other part for you that you're right for. And I said, Flash? And she said, yes. And I said, oh, great. And I said, she said, let me go find you the sides. I said, don't worry about it. I'm already off book on those sides. Like, I don't know. I got this wild hair and like.
You knew you were more suited for Flash.
Yeah.
So you prepared.
Maybe it'll go that way. And so I actually wore another shirt, like a t-shirt on underneath my button down. So I took the button down off, took the glasses off, and then did my Flash audition right there.
A little more bicep.
Little more, yes. And she said, okay, I want you to meet Sam Raimi. As soon as I was done, I want you to meet Sam. I said, great, okay. She said, I'll call your agents. So, okay.
Did he say, hey, buddy, when you first walked in, or was it not till you were on set?
Probably it's midway. Yeah.
Okay.
That's typical Sam. And so the next week I got paid $500 to come in and screen test as Flash Thompson versus all of the Spider-Man candidates. There are three of the Spider-Man candidates.
One of which was James Franco.
One was James Franco, who was in the middle of shooting James Dean.
Right.
So he was, he looked like James and kind of did James Dean as Peter Parker. And so that's how he and I met. Scott Speedman was another one. And then there was another kid who I've never seen again, who was the third one.
Something McGuire?
No, Toby had a separate screen test later on. After this round.
Oh, this one you hadn't heard of. It has another famous name, I'm sensing.
So that was so I did that and then met Sam and he did the Hey Buddy. And then I didn't hear again until November.
What? How long had passed?
That was June.
June
to November.
That's
didn't
too long.
hear anything.
That's too long.
November, they called back and said, hey, they want you to come back in again, screen test again.
So Endeavor had found out no information? You must have heard something.
They were going to go cast Peter Parker, then they were going to cast Mary Jane.
Yeah, you're not, an immediate, the role is not an immediate concern.
And that was the same with James Franco, I assume, as well. You're not getting Peter Parker, and you're not on hold.
Right.
Just
we'll let
crickets.
You know.
Yeah, crickets. And so then they came back around. I guess they added James, and then they brought me in.
So from June to November, had you moved lock, stock, and barrel already to Los Angeles?
Yeah. After that meeting with Raimi, I went home, packed up the car, and drove out.
You had a meeting with Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
You didn't have a job.
No. And
you just had the promise of a future. And also, by the way, Janet, the casting agent, are you aware at that point that she's one of the most influential casting agents?
No, I don't know. I don't know anything. I'm just going in there and just trying to crush everything I possibly can.
So that voice that's saying, "Kid, make the move. You're gonna be fine," is your own.
Oh, and I had that. I knew as soon as I got those results in New York, it was, this is working. This is going to happen. Like, we're going. You're getting the agent you want. You're getting the manager. I picked my agent, picked my manager, went out. Out of the LA showcases, I got offered a TV holding deal, which in 2000 was like, you either did TV or film.
Sure.
So I was like, no, I'm doing film. Because it was only George Clooney at that point. No, there was no crossover. There was no cable.
Right.
It was like The Sopranos and that was it. It just started.
You were offered a holding deal and you said no.
I said, no, I'm doing film. And then had that meeting with Sam Raimi and it was like, okay, well, I'm right in my decision. I'm going to stick with the film thing, packed up the car, came back out, and just started screen testing for every movie there was.
What was the agent at Endeavor's first reaction to I'm passing on the TV thing?
Well, that was at his advice.
Okay, great.
You're doing film, kid. Like, we're doing this. Look at the Spider-Man situation. Like, this is going to work. And so right after that, I then met with Antoine Fuqua for Training Day, tested for him for the role that eventually went to Dr. Dre. Maybe you've heard of him. And then I met with Gregory Hoblet, who was going to direct Heart's War at the time, for the third lead, which was Harrison Ford, Edward Norton, and then I would have been the third lead. He dropped out, and the new director came in, and a new cast, and all that kind of stuff. But like I think Black Hawk Down.
The point is,
it was crazy. It was just crazy at that time. It was like just domino.
Heady opportunities are coming your way. You feel fully prepared, and Spider-Man becomes the part of Flash becomes the first actual booked film.
Well, so November comes back around. They bring me back in to screen test again. This time by myself. The test is for me.
June to November, they let you know in November you're welcome to come back and test again.
Yes.
Okay.
So I come back in to test again, and there's a lot of improv. So they had me like opposite, I think, Francine. I had my arm around Francine and was pretending that she was Mary Jane. And so I was
always a good move.
Very ornery with Francine. And then they brought in Sam's producing partner, Grant Curtis, and they had me slap Grant Curtis around. They were like, this is well, they didn't tell me to slap him around. They just told me to bully him. So I just started slapping him.
For real?
Yeah, putting on his knees, slap him, make him cluck like a chicken. And then after I was done, Sam came over and sat next to me, and he held up my resume, which was like, a fledgling college actor's senior year resume that's like fluffed up with all this nonsense and special skills and all that.
You've done some theater, huh?
That's exactly what he said. He said, you have done theater. And I know he was just trying to suss out whether or not he could trust me.
Sure.
And so I left. I went home, put my suit on because I had to go bodyguard that night. I had to go bounce that night. And on my way to work, right as I was pulling up, a phone call rang, and they said, you got it. And my phone just started ringing like crazy. Excuse me. And so much so that I just walked out of work. Because my phone just wouldn't. Everyone in town just knew. The agency knew. It spread to my man. Like all these people just started calling, and everybody knew without me even saying anything.
Sure.
And I just walked out and went home, took that suit off, and went out to a party that was like thrown for me. And I had this like amazing 2 weeks. It was just like calls from everybody around the business. Holy cow! Oh my God, the kid, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. It's all happening. 2 weeks later, my roommate at the time came home and said, what's the part you're playing in Spider-Man? I said, Flash. She said, are you sure?
Oh.
I said, yeah, of course. What are you talking about? I said, well, I think my friend auditioned for that part today. That's impossible.
I've had parties.
Yeah.
In my honor.
Yeah. Called up my agent, and he said, yeah, business, we haven't heard from Business Affairs. Let me do some digging. Let me get back to you. And he said, the head of the studio did not think that I was all-American looking enough. And they opened it back up, despite Sam Raimi and Francine both,
saying this
fighting
is our
for
guy.
me. Yeah. And that went on for another month and a half until
torture.
Christmas Eve. I went home to Pittsburgh, and of course, I just shut my phone off I didn't answer my phone for like a month, and then went home to Pittsburgh and was like lying to everyone. And Christmas Eve, the phone rings, and my agent says, how's the holidays? I said, yeah, great. And he said, well, this is how he phrased it. They didn't find anyone else. So the part is yours again. And I
do you believe it this time?
I just said, great, man, just whatever, man, just tell me where I need to show up. Like I was just already, I had this super difficult LA lesson.
Yeah.
Which it was really hard. And that isn't even that isn't even the biggest heartbreak I've ever suffered in this business, but it was the first, it was like an undigestible meal right out of the gate.
Yeah. That's why I asked, did you tell anyone? Because that's the lesson that comes from that too. And it might just be my own gambler's instinct about superstition. the moment I start telling people about anything that's coming together, it's almost a guarantee it's going to fall apart.
I don't do it anymore, but there is, especially now, there's a pipeline with the internet that you just can't say anything about anything because someone will misconstrue, and especially in today's day and age, someone will misconstrue or not even misconstrue, they'll do it on purpose.
Right.
They'll change what you said on purpose, beam that out.
Clickbait.
And now, all of a sudden I'm the spokesman for the studio.
Yeah.
It's like, I didn't say that. Yeah. And I look like I'm talking out of school, and it's just a mess. And like I said, that's not that, I mean, there have been more even, bigger messes that I've been a part of at that level. So I don't like to talk about anything until it's in the can, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote something that I'm directing, and I have this Academy Award nominated producer who's brilliant and amazing, and financing. We signed an actress. It's all moving like a fast train down the track. And I keep telling everyone who's asking how it's going, I don't believe it's real until I'm on the set saying action. And then I got to the point where I said, I'll buy it when I'm at the premiere.
Yeah. It just, that finish line keeps moving. But they find things out.
Yeah.
And they try to they want you to talk about it.
Sure.
And even if it's just 2 words buried in the middle of an interview, they'll pull that out and turn it into some giant article that's not really what you said.
Yeah.
And it's tough because I want to believe that they're just genuinely excited, but they're also very cavalier about your career. They don't care about your career. They don't care about your reputation. They're just trying to get some kind of clickbait so that they can get the news out first and at your detriment. So it sucks because I'm excited too, and I want to talk about it, but you can't.
No.
You just can't.
Yeah. And then the moment will come when you'll be asked to talk about it way too much, and it'll become, I kind of already talked about this. I want to talk now, if you don't mind, segueing to a little bit of the present of all the things that are going on in your neck of the woods about the Angel of Vine. This serialized detective podcast that is very unique in its style and storytelling, jumping to a past. And I'm a lifelong devotee of the film noir world. The aforementioned film that I wrote and am allegedly directing is a contemporary set, but a noir style. So it also makes me too knowledgeable and maybe a tougher audience than anybody needs to be, by way of me saying I fell for this thing hard and instantly.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and your participation in particular was one of the more difficult ones, because I don't know how much of a fan of the genre you were going into it, but the hard-boiled detective has been done by people who went on to become famous for doing just that.
Oh, sure.
And I know in my own path of finding my hard-boiled detective, I hear the music of these lines, having been with the script for so long, and you start to develop a very specific look and all these things, and then you realize, an actor comes in and makes it their own, and they change your perception simply by their choices. And that's a very long way of saying I love the choices you made in this part.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so how did this come to you, and what was the process like?
Thanks so much. Yeah. It was just, it came from my agent.
Right.
I too love noir. I love detective stories. I love crime stories. I told my agents, whatever form it comes in. I mean, I chase after good material. I just like good writing. And that's where everything starts with the script for me. But like kind of aside from that, I also told my agents, back when I was that athlete kid in high school and I was looking at what I was going to do in college, in Western Pennsylvania, like becoming an artist that's not an option. Mm-hmm. You're going to go to college and you're going to play sports and use that to get into a better school and study something real and tangible. And really the only thing I was passionate about as a kid was like law enforcement. Like I just like justice. and I wanted to stop bad people from hurting good people or innocent people, like as a kid, as a teenager. And so I was.
So it wasn't necessarily the puzzle solving of being a detective. It was more about protecting.
I think I just that I was trying to find something that I could work super long hours at, and just be kind of put. You know, I'm an obsessive type.
Okay.
And so I was trying to find something healthy to put that type of an obsession into, and
you as you said, sorry, but I want to reiterate an important word, which is justice.
Yes, I had a sense of justice, or maybe that translated into just a want to hunt people.
Sure, fair.
I don't know. I mean, I think there's a fine line there for the people to do it professionally. But I was looking into federal law enforcement prior to auditioning for Carnegie Mellon. I was going to go play college basketball. Criminal justice, and I had a cousin in the FBI, and I was trying to understand what a lifestyle like that. And FBI was a little more white collar crime at the time, so I was trying to figure out where else I could go to have some kind of out of the office excitement.
Bounty hunter comes to mind.
U.S. Marshal. I don't know. You know, I was trying to figure that out, and then got back into acting. So, you know, my agents called me up and said, "Hey, there's this great script. You should read it. It's like 200 pages long, but just get into it." And it was for this great podcast written by the brilliant Sofia Vergara, and it was that hard-boiled noir detective who was a bit Bud White, but also a bit like he had kids. You know, he had little girls, and it was loosely based on the guy who directed it, his grandfather, who was a cop back in like the 50s, like post-war LA. And I just thought that there was an interesting juxtaposition there, because there was the typical tough guy. I'm going to get drunk. You know, I'm drunk all the time, but I'm going to beat your face in for information, which I love. But there was this other side of it where there was this familial anchor with these kids, and him reading poems and children's stories to the kids, and so there's these very, very private moments that he recorded on his recorder, because, you know, for people out there who haven't listened to it, it's a mystery that is revealed through these lost tapes in the present day.
Tapes that were made by this detective.
Made by this detective back in the 1950s, and they're trying to figure out who solved, who was behind this unsolved crime, and they realize that these people find this box full of tapes in their attic and realize that their grandfather solved this crime, which is what led to him becoming this crazy recluse later on in life, and this crazy, really bad alcoholic recluse. And this is kind of like the inciting incident that drove him off the deep end, and they find these tapes that he recorded as he was trying to solve this mystery. And so what I thought was really interesting about this was, I think it made the story more tragic to me, and therefore, like, really, I could really put my heart into it, because there was this tragic side of this guy who did have a soft side towards children, towards his kids, that then went haywire as he kind of descended into the madness of this case. And that's what I thought was really interesting to me about this particular take on the noir genre.
Yeah, he had daughters, and at the center of this case was a brutally murdered young woman who was somebody's daughter.
And potentially many, many, many more.
Yes. As we find out.
Yeah.
Right.
So those, I think those were the components that I think.
So you love the material. You tell your agent that, and you have a meeting with the show's creator, the writer.
I just read it and said, you know what, I'll do it. Let's go. Yeah, I love this material, and let's go.
And then what happened?
So then day one, it's me and Alfred Molina filming the climax, or I guess probably the emotional high moment of the. I shouldn't say emotional high moment, but there was some like kind of this epic battle between my detective and Alfred Molina's 1950s studio head.
Right.
This brash, powerful.
Brash and crazy.
Yeah, crazy. And so, I mean, it was.
That was the first thing you recorded?
First thing I think we did, like Fred and I did a 13-page scene. together, which, I've done a lot of voiceover work, and, I've shot whole voiceover movies where I never met my castmates until the premiere. And this one it was Fred and I sitting across the table with these pages in between us and these mics in between us, like just going at it.
Did you have much rehearsal time?
No, we just got in there.
Really?
Just mixed it up. After we told a bunch of Sam Raimi stories.
That's right.
Because he was Dr. Octopus.
Of course.
Yeah, so we had a lot of ground to cover there.
I wasn't the only one to throw "Hey, buddy" at you.
No.
Not by a long shot. Well, yeah, so it is unbelievably compelling to listen to. I wanted to hear that it was exciting and fun to do. I sort of sensed that it would have been, because again, as you said, it does all start with the material. No matter what it is we're doing, we want to be saying words that seem exciting if we were just listening or watching. And how much work ended up being involved once you got past the first day of you and Fred?
Well, I went from there to, there was a day with Alan Tudyk.
Love Alan.
Who plays a very, plays an insane character. And so that was a blast. And I mean, I was just surrounded by just fantastic actors the whole way through.
You got to do your scenes with your scene partners as opposed to most voiceover work, which is you're in a vacuum.
Which was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because now you're actually acting.
Yeah, and it's messy, and you're stepping on each other, and you're moving through. And we would so Fred and I would do the 13 pages straight through, no interruptions.
That's crazy.
We get done, and then they'd say,
"Holy shit!
Okay, let's just roll into it again."
Yeah,
and then we just do another, which is there's a half hour, 35 minutes, right? That we're just in it, and then we do another one, maybe take a break, come back in. They might have like a note or two on a line here or there.
Sure, they better.
And we just go into it again.
Right. That's crazy.
So we get that.
It never happens, by the way, for an actor.
It's incredible. So we do it maybe 3 or 4 times. And it was the kind of thing where we get done and, Fred would kind of punch the table and say, God, this is a great scene. I want to see this,
Yeah.
And then we'd move on to the next giant monster twisting scene together.
Right.
And go from there. And there was so much interesting history. I'm a real sucker for LA history. It's that old Woody Allen quote that LA has no culture. There's more culture in my yogurt, which is like, I think there is history here.
Course.
There's a lot, and there's so many ghost stories and surrounding the entertainment industry, and there's so much at stake. And I mean,
and also liars and cheaters and insane people
and power corrupting,
right? Absolutely,
and murders that were covered up because of money and power. And and I hope I don't sound gleeful in saying all of that, because obviously I'm not behind
No, just a fan of the storytelling.
Yeah,
and so let's do a fictionalized version, which I assume all of this was.
Yeah, but it feels real because it takes place in real places.
Right. No, that's why I say I assume this was, because there's no question while you're listening to it, you're wondering, did this? Wait a second. I know it's similar to Black Dahlia, but what And also, if you're a little obsessed about true crime podcasts or TV shows, as I am, there's more than enough real stories that this could have been drawn from just as easily.
It feels real.
Yeah.
The places it took place in were real, and it's all backed up by a lot of history. Like some of these people kind of sort of existed.
But I'm almost more impressed that it was completely thought of.
Yeah.
As opposed to researched and reported.
Well, and even the commercials that take place inside of the story.
Yes.
They have these old like 1950s jingles and things that pop up as you're listening, which just add to the flavor and just the idea to the theatrical convention of these found tapes that reveal this story. That the descendants of this haunted detective find this tape in these tapes in the attic that start revealing who their grandfather was as they're trying to piece that together, and they can't stop listening.
Right.
As you listener can't stop listening to this thing unfold. I thought that was a really, really brilliant idea.
And I imagine the success of any podcast is followed by the people who create it, and they have a lot more invested in what's going to come of this for a performer, artist, actor. All the joy is in the doing of it.
Yeah.
For sure.
But I will say that whoever, and I forget the gentleman's name. I'm sorry, but the post-production on it is incredible.
Yeah, no, it's produced in terms of sound and Foley. It is theater of the mind. It absolutely feels like a live, living movie that you're listening to, as opposed to two people in a room and a couple of microphones, and then some guy does Foley later.
The street noises, the
everything,
all the physicality. Yeah. And even just aging the audio to make it sound like these were lost tapes from the 50s. It's really amazing. They did a brilliant job of that. But yeah, Fred and I got to go in and have all the fun, and Howlin'.
But I'm glad you mentioned that aspect of it, because that is actually where it was either going to be made or broken in that post-production. This is either going to be lifted to the point of genius quality, right?
Yeah.
Or it was going to be just okay.
We're just a couple guys on a green screen, really.
At the end of it.
It's like, please make this sound cool.
Right. And what are you told that's happened with it, or it's being embraced?
Well, yeah. Back to our conversation about not talking about what's coming next.
Good.
But the only I will say this. I will say this in a generalized way. As an actor,
it was embraced.
When you have a great experience, you just want to get back together with everybody and do it again. And there is talk
of that possibly
of that. And as an artist, you just hope it succeeds enough to keep doing it.
Right.
And it looks like it has done just that, and people have really loved it enough.
Well, that's great to hear. I was a little reticent just because I hadn't done the research to find out how well it was doing. So then asking that opens up the possibility of, hey, I hope it finds an audience as an answer. I assumed that it would, and that it would be a very large audience, especially with an agency behind it as well. And that it had a future beyond what's now available to the audience. Just a tremendous job in every department.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that just, it just found me. I think there was someone else that was going to play my part, that I think at the last minute couldn't do it, or something
it's
like that.
It's healthy to make that assumption. And I always tell the director, never tell me who your first choice was.
Yeah, well, I was actually told who it was, which was fine with me.
By the way, I was too on Maisel, which was astonishing, because when you get an offer for something, you think, oh, look at that. Wow. I'm the only one that can do this.
Finally, they've come to their senses.
And you find out later, no, there was actually somebody else, and he fucked it up pretty bad.
That's okay. It would have been a very different podcast, I think, with the person. But, it's one of those things where just...
Hey, Jim Parsons
those things
great.
Find you.
He's great and he's diverse.
Yeah. He is fantastic as a noir detective. Yes.
And he had every reason in the world to anyways. We'll continue that bit.
It wasn't Jim Parsons.
Nope, it certainly wasn't. So congratulations on The Angel of Vine. It really is amazing. However, people are enjoying podcasts, get to it and find it. If you enjoy the detective genre, noir or otherwise, it's brilliantly executed. Writing, acting, but also the post-production takes it to a whole other level. Yeah. That really does excite you as a listener of podcasts in a way that very few do, quite frankly, and I've tried them all. I feel guilty taking you closer to the 90-minute mark. I can't believe that much time has already flown by. Are there anything else? I feel like there's so much happening right now, but I don't know how much you're allowed to talk about.
Oh,
in terms of the film universe. There are several things announced.
Well, yeah. Well, back to our previous conversation about speaking about things.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't.
It's
more stories to come.
Yeah, we'll do another one of these things down the road.
Well, I look forward to it. Yes, please, and thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I can speak more freely, once there's some perspective on some of the things that have gone on.
You had a hell of a run in True Blood, and although your original decision was to do film and not TV, the world of television becomes far more interesting than so many films that are made, that you must be lured on many occasions to jump in?
Well, I came to LA in 2000, and it was a very different business,
of course,
than it is now, especially. Yeah. But it was a very different business than it was in the mid 2000s, because Sopranos became the
bigger than anything,
the wedge to the door that opened, Sex in the City and Deadwood and Rome and The Wire and you go on and on. True Blood, Game of Thrones. Now it opened, and even like Mad Men and Walking Dead, and the way what cable blew up into.
I'm going to say HBO. The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
There it
certainly
is.
owes a debt as well,
and even paved the way for the streaming networks to give the keys to the car to a showrunner and allow them creative freedom and not step in and say, well, we know better than you, Alan Ball and David Fincher, like, do what you want to do, which then attracted people like Soderbergh and Scorsese to come into TV
and Fincher.
And Fincher, yeah. In the mid 2000s, for me, it was True Blood was the hottest show on TV.
Sure.
It changed everything. And I think, it sometimes gets forgotten in the, greatest cable shows of all time list, but it paved the way for, the sexuality you certainly see in shows like Game of Thrones,
no question.
The level of violence and blood, and also there was a real political commentary.
Oh yeah,
and in a kind of on a social, a socio level, they were talking about big topics hidden beneath this kind of dumb backwoods vampire story, and they were hiding real important topics to be talked about at the water cooler on Monday morning.
Right.
And so, of course, there was, at the time, there was nothing better in the theater than True Blood was on HBO.
Yeah, well, its success certainly tells that story.
Yeah.
You don't last as long as they did and gather as big of an audience as they did without.
No. And again, it was another, I had worked with Sam Raimi early on, and this was a chance to work with Alan Ball every day and work with Anna Paquin every day, and some heavyweight theater actors like Dennis O'Hare, and just, everybody on that show, Chris Bauer. I mean, they're all just heavyweight.
Yeah. They
actors.
Raise a level of everybody's game,
God.
and you feel like you're playing with the right people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in terms of your creative output as a once or origin story writer-director, I've had a mantra on the show for 10 years, which is if you're not creating, you're waiting. And as artists, we don't have to wait for the phone to ring. So what do you do about generating your own material?
Well, I went out a few years back. I went out and self-financed the documentary, and I directed it, self-financed, and then sold it at Park City the night that the premiere, and that got sold to Netflix and Showtime and a bunch of worldwide territories, like right out of the gate. It's called Le Bear. So if you have an hour and a half and you want to laugh and I mean and also feel some poignancy in there. The stuff that we captured on film was, there were acts of providence that we caught on film while shooting that documentary, and so that was great. So I went out and did that with and then used that to start a production company, and I have two films in the can right now that I'm putting together, or one is put together that we just sold.
Congratulations!
Thank you, and that I star in and produced, and had a lot of, story input on. And the other one is one that took me about 7 years to get together. And it's this great independent film that we just finished shooting called Shoplifters of the World, about the day that the band The Smiths broke up.
Oh, wow.
We have all the music. Film came out amazing.
What?
And it's about this group of kids in Denver, Colorado, one of which is so distraught over the breakup that he holds up a local radio station and forces them to play nothing but the Smiths all day long to impress this girl that he was in love with. And it's based on this supposedly true story that Morrissey validated in this Details magazine article. And this writer-director wrote this amazing script that's full of like Oscar Wilde Easter eggs and Morrissey lyrics. And it was once again one of the top 3 or 5 best scripts I've ever read in almost 20 years in this town. And I said, I'm gonna die making this movie. We're gonna make this movie.
Right.
It took us 7 years, but we did it.
Yeah.
So now we're in post on that. We're gonna deliver in June, and then that'll be so much fun to take out.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So those are a couple, and then I just came back from Pittsburgh where I was looking at this thing that I may do there.
All right, we'll leave it at that for now.
So yeah.
But thank you for creating your own future and things that you become passionate about to further explain to fans that is the way. Be proactive not only in your life but your ideas of what work can be.
Sure. And I meet so many actors that like submit headshots, and it's like, well, what's your advice? It's like, have somebody see your work.
Yeah.
And then, I think when you start out in this business, I just want to stop bouncing. I just want to make enough money where I don't have to bounce.
Take that suit off.
And then I don't have to go into this scene study class on Thursday night. I'm working so much. I just don't have time. Like those are the 2 big boxes to check. And then from there, it's about working on other people's visions.
Yeah.
But then you get to a point where I don't know if it's like in Chekhov plays, like 37 years old is like that age where they all start having those crises where I didn't write War and Peace. What am I doing?
Right.
And that maybe that's crossing the threshold of 40. It was like, what do I want to leave? And am I a part of things that I really love? And am I showing people who I am through my art?
Mm-hmm.
And so it became, I started saying no to things because I had enough money from that TV show to say no. And,
right.
I really started being very choosy and,
you have to be.
Yeah. And, because I wanted, I want to say something about myself. And so some of that became, reading a script like Shoplifters of the World and saying, I love what this is about. And
this has to happen.
This is worth fighting for.
Right.
To going through the ups and downs. Because it's, there's so many brutal ups and downs, especially in independent filmmaking today. It's like so hard. It's such a thankless job a lot of times.
You do have to work harder than everyone else.
But if you find something that you love, you'll just do it. And so it became about that, kind of peppered with things that I do love, like that podcast, man. And then this other film that I completed last year in the Bronx called Stano, which was this great script that I read, years ago, and it was a great starring role for me in particular. And at the time, I thought it would also be a great supporting role for that. I was like, oh man, that's Sofia Vergara. She, she's known for her comedy, but I can tell that she could really knock this part out.
She's got some dramatic chops.
And I was really just looking for an excuse to get in the same room with her because I really thought if I can get in the same room with her, I can win this girl over. And we wound up married. And
you certainly did.
And one day she was saying, I don't know what I'm going to do next, and I really don't have anything lined up. And I just said, look, working with your spouse it's tricky because you're kind of opening your personal life up to public scrutiny, which I like to keep it separate. I don't like giving that part of myself.
Good.
And, but with that said, I was like, this part is great for you. And I've been thinking, I've had you in mind for this for years. And I said, I'm going to leave it on the side of the bed and you can read it. And if you don't, just tell me what and it really hit her in the, an emotional level. And she said, amazing. This is a great movie, a great story. And this is a great part for me and I'll do it. And so we did that together.
And you're still married.
And we are still, and we had a great time together.
Oh, that's
and I
the
think
best.
we've worked like our energies. It's just good. Like the chemistry, well, shit, we have chemistry.
Yeah, but it's another thing. The working environment is not the chemistry at home.
No, it was great because we're both people who work extra hours. We're those types of personalities.
Right.
And so it's tough when you're in a loving relationship where you're the kind of person that's just going to work like an animal. Because in the back of your mind, you miss that other person.
Sure.
And you just want to be home with them, or you want to get, crawl in the bed and put on Netflix and you can't because you're working 16, 18 hour days all the time, just compulsively. And so to have her there was great because it was like, we don't have to go home. We could just stay here forever.
Right.
Because you're here and this is awesome. And we get along so well together and then work really well off of each other. So I'm very proud of everybody's work in that film. And also, I got to cast Dennis O'Hare from, True Blood days, and Dennis was kind enough, and Vinny Pastore and
amazing.
Michael Rispoli is so fantastic in that movie. And so there was just a group of great actors.
And where can people find that now?
Sometime this year, knock on wood, we're figuring out the rollout plan and that'll be up and coming at some point.
How exciting.
Yeah.
I'm contractually obligated to point out that when people do get into bed with their loved ones, they can also dial up Amazon Prime.
Duly noted. Or Hulu. We did a Hulu commercial together,
there you
actually.
Go.
So, there you go. Yes.
All right. It's come to the portion of the show called Ask Kevin. You're allowed to ask me any question. It could be silly, sincere, meaningless, or meaningful, or neither. None of those. But you're allowed one question. That's good coffee. Sorry, I was talking to you.
Okay, I'd like to ask you. Well, I mean, this is something that I know already.
Oh, okay.
This is kind of like this is like a volleyball.
Is this a trick?
This is a set. And I was asking earlier because we were talking about actors who make faces
off camera.
When it's on your coverage, the actor who is just off camera, just with their head right next to the camera,
looking at you,
and
you're looking at them,
is being incredibly unprofessional and making insane, goofy faces while you're trying to concentrate,
challenging your professionalism.
Coverage. And I volunteered that in my time on ER, John Stamos would make crazy faces at me off camera.
Messed with you pretty bad, did he?
I mean, look, I got through it, but it was like, you get that son of a bitch,
Yeah.
And so my question to you is, have you ever witnessed anything of that nature?
Let me see if I can spike this one. So yeah, in the courtroom on A Few Good Men, I'm like, where's Waldo in that cast? There's some very, very famous people, two of which are Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson, and they're going toe-to-toe at each other. Jack is sitting on the stand in the courtroom. Tom's coming in for the kill. If you know the film, it's on every 11 minutes if you have any sort of satellite or cable. You know that there's a big, powerful coming in for the kill moment. And we shot that scene, all of Jack's coverage over 5 days.
I want the truth.
Yeah. That's right. That's
that
when Tom's
moment.
Coming in.
I want, which is the crescendo of A Few Good Men.
Right.
Yes.
And at some point, one of the thousands of angles they're shooting, the camera is situated just on Tom from the POV, the point of view of Jack Nicholson's character. So as you described, Jack's face is next to the camera lens looking at Tom. So Tom has something to look at, in this case, his scene partner. For those who have not been on a television or film set, that's what happens in that giant courtroom scene. It comes down to a very tight close-up shot where your scene partner's face is pushed right up against the camera.
Well, and good for Jack for doing it, because a lot of actors actually just peace out on that.
Yeah, those are shithead actors.
Yeah.
And Jack is not one of them. And the very first take, or maybe it was the 11th take, but I just remember at some point, Tom was coming in for the kill. Jack's face was pushed up against the camera, and he furrowed his brow as only Jack can, put on a giant Joker-esque smile, that he reprieved from the Tim Burton film. Looked like a bobblehead in terms of the physicality of his shenanigans, and mocked Tom to his face and his performance as Tom was doing it. And to my surprise, and anyone else witnessing, including the director, Tom stayed in the zone, in the pocket, completed the scene, and then hit Jack Nicholson in the shoulder about as hard as a person should hit a fellow actor, that's for sure, especially one that famous from Mount Rushmore. And they both laughed like 9-year-olds on Christmas morning, and it was pretty magical, needless to say.
Was that the take that was used in the final?
I'd like to say yes, but I have no idea.
I hope it was.
Yeah. But given Tom's consistency, I think it was Jack's way of saying, you can't be this good to another actor.
Yeah.
And Tom saying, you're damn right I am.
Very underrated, that guy.
Yeah, we were talking off camera about Rain Man came up, and I, in fact, made the note on the paper, and thank goodness you brought it up because I would have gone past it. And we both agreed.
Yeah.
His performance in Rain Man is what makes that film, not the Academy Award winner.
It's one thing to play Rain Man, right? Which takes its own research, its own cadence, its own...
To make it believable.
Yeah.
But then it becomes one note.
Yeah.
All the way through the film.
And all too often, that's the character that wins the Oscar, is the one who is kind of staying inside of this bubble of this character that's been concocted.
That's been done so believably.
That is, to a certain degree, oblivious to what's going on around. Not to say that there isn't a skill set to stay in that pocket while things are kind of going around, but the person that most often goes unheralded is the person who has to act opposite that person and has to build up to the level of frustration, for example, that Tom had to build up to in that film.
Right. And opposite. The character arc.
Of somebody who's giving you nothing.
Right.
Literally. You're acting in a bubble to a certain degree.
And you have to, by design, not like Tom Cruise's character in Rain Man at the beginning.
Yeah.
And you have to really root for him and care about him in the end. And that arc that takes us on the journey befell that actor who was ever going to play that part as to whether the film would work.
And thank God he went through all of that training with Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah.
Because to prepare him for Jack Nicholson.
That's exactly right.
Off camera.
Yeah. Yeah. For a guy who's giving him too much.
Woo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Joe. This takes us to the final segment. I hope you're ready.
Oh, man.
It's time for Kevin's Pop Quiz.
Oh, boy.
Between 5 and 15 points possible for each of the 3 questions. Once the final score is tabulated, it'll be posted on our website along with the current standing of the top 100. Are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Question number 1. Keith David or David Keith?
Oh, Keith David. He played my commander in Behind Enemy Lines, Columbia.
It's all of that is correct.
There you go.
Question number 2. Carl Weathers or the weather in Carlsbad?
Because some damn fool accused you of being the best. Carl Weathers.
That'd be Carl Weathers. Last question. Steve?
Steve?
That's correct. We have a perfect score, as indicated by Sam, the engineer of the stars, in the booth, who's pretty much going bananas. Congratulations, and thank you.
Thank you, man. This was awesome.
Oh, good.
Thanks so much.
Good. This show has provided me opportunities to cross paths with people whose work I admire and wouldn't have a chance to meet otherwise.
Oh, thank you. I admire your work.
Well, damn it. Then here's looking at you, kid.
Hey.
Thank you again. And please, I meant to share my hockey story, my only sports experience through Pittsburgh. So Jamie, my better half, who aforementioned Raisin Ambridge, cares more about her Penguins than her Steelers. She just fell madly in love with hockey as a kid, and that is her love. I
think Lemieux is the greatest Pittsburgh sports figure of all time.
Oh, there we have. Wow. That says it all.
That is not negotiable.
That says it all.
He is, yeah.
Yeah. While her sister Jacqueline paces in front of the TV while the Stillers play each game and can't sit down until the game's over, Jamie has always cared most about her Penguins. So, that we started dating more seriously. The tradition started that I would go back and see her family at Thanksgiving. So I, being raised in Northern California, long before the Sharks, had no upbringing, education, or experience in the world of hockey, and therefore didn't know anything about the game. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm in love with this woman who just cares so much about this team. So I thought, we're going back to Pittsburgh for Thanksgiving. Maybe I've got some connection somewhere that I can get us seats on the glass, as they like to say. This is before you and I met.
Yeah.
So I get us seats on the glass. By the way, not the
best seats in pro sports.
Yeah.
On the glass at hockey, there's nothing better. It's wild.
You're in the game.
Yeah. I mean, and they're whipping by it so fast. I mean, it's crazy.
They're slamming up against the not glass right in front of your face.
It's nuts.
Yeah. There's about a foot and a half between you. So I get these seats, and it's my first time at a hockey game. And I'd always heard there's no live sport like it. You don't understand until you experience it. It doesn't matter if you don't know the rules. You will never forget this experience. And sure enough, that is true 100%. But it becomes a little more memorable on this first Saturday after Thanksgiving because Sid the Kid has a hat trick.
Oh, yeah,
and nice. All the hats go on the ice, as is tradition. And I'm the asshole who turns to Jamie and says, why is everyone throwing their hats on the ice? To share with you just how little I knew about the sport. And here's the statistical and historical moment. 1 year to the day, first Saturday after Thanksgiving, I get his tickets on the glass again at the Igloo. Sid the Kid gets another hat trick. My hat is the first on the ice. Oh, yes. Now, granted, as a Jew, it was hat night, so it was easy for me to part with it. But how about that full circle?
Wow.
Yeah, and also statistically, I don't know what the odds are, if it's ever been done before, 1 year to the day, the hat trick, let alone how many hat tricks in one's career.
You know, I know Sid, and I'm going to recommend that he eats turkey the day before every game. Sid, yeah, what are you eating, man?
Yeah. Isn't that...
We got to get that. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Especially for someone who knew nothing about the sport and had these two historical moments in the full circle of the meaningfulness of that.
Well, and the hockey education as a result.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. Truly crazy. Well, I thank you for indulging me to share that story because it related back to you walking onto Heinz Field before a Steelers game in 2010. I want to say as part of a visit. We were also Grand Marshal of the Pittsburgh Macy's Parade. Does this ring a bell?
Yeah, I do all kinds of things back in the community. But yeah, I walk back for the football games. They'll let me come out and wave the towel before kickoff, and I know a lot of players, and I know all the owners. And
does it annoy you, like Jamie, when every sport and every team has adopted their version of the terrible towel?
That's super annoying.
Yeah.
Oh, when I see like white towels and listen, I'm glad that the Rams are back, but like, come on now, y'all need to recognize there's one terrible towel and that's it.
Find something else.
Find something else.
Yeah,
you can get big, giant, blow up those big
whatever it is
you click from free throws or whatever the hell you want to do, but forget the towels are ours.
Yeah,
just, please.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Congratulations on everything. I can't wait to see the next thing. I can't wait to see all the things we can't talk about.
Yes.
And you are now contractually obligated, verbal contract, to return to the show. And I greatly look forward to it.
Done.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
And now that I know your love of the genre for reals, I'm going to threaten you now on the microphone and send you my script and see where the fuck that leads. How about that? How about that?
Ooh.
Thank you to Sam Kiefer, the engineer beyond compare.
Always my pleasure.
And Hannah Crichton, our wonderful booking genius who made this particular show possible. I owe her a debt of gratitude. Corey Levin and Post, all the fine folks here at Earwolf. Again, stop by anytime. We're right on Sunset Boulevard. They'd love to meet you. Tell them I sent you.
Cold brew coffee.
Cold brew coffee.
Delicious.
Can't beat that.
There's a keg of beer that's still here.
I mean, come on.
That needs to be finished off. So come on down and do a keg stand.
Yeah, if you know what's good for you. Thank you again, Joe.
Thanks very much for having me.
And all the very best to you and your family in this new year.
Ooh, go Pens.
Go Pens. Until next time, and as always, get out of my face.